we have our 3 final presentations prior to the Delta presentation, prior to the presentation at the Delta. And I can guarantee you we have a treat at every one of these presentations. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Marisa Davis, who is the Director for Product Marketing at MNI Research Group, which is part of the Meredith Corporation now. And Marisa, the MNI Group and the University of Mississippi, the Magazine Innovation Center, and Purdue University spent almost all last semester working on a study of Generation Z, i.e. most of you students, or like our sales folks refer to them, the kiddos among the rest of the group. So Marisa will first tell us, summarize that research and the results of that research. She will be also followed by a presentation by our one and only Bo Sachs. And then Matt Potts will sort of bring the whole thing to a print proud, digital smart event at the end. Marisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm deeply humbled and honored to present in front of you today. I was not expecting so many students in the room, which is really awesome. I am very lucky to be the presenter on the last day, right after lunch. Yeah. But the Z's in my presentation do not mean go to sleep. I'll be talking again about this vibrant young generation that's sitting in front of us, who are just graduating from college, entering the workforce, and making decisions about media buying and their consumer habits. So in the next 30 minutes, I'll be walking you through Generation Z and how you can connect with them. Show of hands, who in the room today thinks that they're part of Generation Z? Okay, so let's dive into who they are. Generation Z is born 1995 to 2012. Hands up if you're actually part of Generation Z now that you know this. Awesome. So Generation Z are more than just Millennials 2.0. They're a force that makes sophisticated choices about their identity, values, and purpose. And they've spent their lives surrounded by digital content and are really good at weeding out what's good and what is bad, and want to pay attention to things that have the right language and the right tone. Like I said, they're born between 1995 and 2012, making the oldest Gen Zer 23 years old, and next year, if not already, probably in charge of $30 million in our media buying. There are currently 72.8 million of them in the United States, making up a quarter of our population. And while they don't have a lot of money right now, they influence $44 billion in discretionary spending among their parents. And as they grow and have their own money, they'll be spending as well. They, again, while they don't have much money now, they're forward thinking. Over 60% of this generation already has a savings account, which is more than any other generation at this age. And 89% of them consider themselves to be price-savvy, price-conscious shoppers, and this is something that likely won't change as they get older. But perhaps, maybe the most exciting thing about them is that they're change agents. They care about the world, open-mindedness, social impact, inclusion, and climate change. This is a generation that was raised on technology, constantly consuming news and information, and it has resulted in a more informed generation than we've ever had before, with inclusive worldviews and demand for social change, as we can see in the wake of the events in our national media and the students at Parkland as just an example. Of course, this generation is just more than numbers. They have a complicated dichotomy, only made more complicated by the fact that they're still growing up, technology is changing very quickly, and the world around them is changing as well. So let's just dive a little deeper into what happened in their lifetime that's changed them. Starting with 1995, the first Gen Zer is born. 1996, we meet Dolly the sheep. Can anyone tell me what's special about Dolly the sheep? Cloned. Yes, Gen Z not only is made up of humans, but sheep clones. A lot of things happened quickly in the next 10 years. In 2003, we saw the launch of MySpace. In 2006, Facebook became open to the public. And in 2007, the first iPhone was launched. Really think about it. This is a generation that's grown up without thinking about where the internet is. They've had smartphones in their hand. They've always had Wi-Fi. Google is a verb. Hey Siri or Alexa are the start of questions for them. They're deeply connected, and they've identified and formed their personalities using Facebook, Snapchat, and Twitter. Another major event that deeply affected them, which I touched on a little bit before, is the 2008 financial crisis. They saw their parents lose 40% of their net worth during this time. They saw their millennial siblings lose jobs or delay getting jobs, moving out of their parents' house. This is still affecting millennials today. And because of that, that's why 60% of Gen Zers have savings accounts and why they're price-conscious consumers. They also, because they've grown up with the internet, are really good and skilled at assessing what their needs are versus what their wants are, and they look to their peers and their online communities to make product decisions. And that's something that's not going to change as they age. And lastly, while perhaps gauche to talk about at a dinner party, we're going to talk about the White House. In 2009, Gen Z, while young, saw Obama elected into the White House. This is the first campaign that used social media. By the 2016 election, technology was innate and the pros and cons that came with it. And Generation Z, this is a very important election to them. For the oldest ones, they could still vote. And they're interested in learning about what happened in the presidential election and understanding the current candidacy. One brand that's speaking to Generation Z very well is Teen Vogue. Teen Vogue has had editorial and great op-eds, heavy-hitting editorial that this generation flocks to, and 45% of Gen Zers say that they're very inquisitive about domestic and foreign affairs and want to get news every single day. This is not like their millennial counterparts. Obviously, all of this information is great, but we wanted to know more as savvy marketers at M&I because we knew that our brands that we partner with and the agencies that we partner with also wanted to understand this generation. So we conducted a survey because we knew the truth was out there. Any X-Files fans? Who's delighted it's back? So our methodology for the survey, we surveyed 58,000 students at Ole Miss and Purdue for no reason other than the generosity of our partners at those schools. So thank you, Dr. Husney, for letting us survey the students here. And if there are any students in the room who participated, thank you as well. We got about 2,500 responses in total. And what was most interesting to us is that half of them wanted to continue a dialogue with us. They gave us their name and their email address because they wanted to opt into future studies, surveys, and interviews and talk to us and share their voice with us. This makes us think that this generation has a proclivity for sharing their data and will do so pretty readily for value from your brand. So now let's dive into the results. If you have glasses, we're going to be looking at a lot of Excel spreadsheets and charts. I'm just kidding. So there's 3 truths. That's it. This will be painless. No worries. So we grouped our findings into 3 different groups. The truth number 1 is digital is in their DNA. Of course it is. So millennials may be tech first, but for Gen Z, technology is innate. If we look for a moment at the youngest Gen Zer who was born in 2012, technology was part of their lives before they were even a thought. Their parents tracked their fertility on their mobile devices before conception. They posted pictures of their sonograms and birth announcements on Facebook before their children were born. When their children were born, they tracked what was happening in every stage of their development in apps on their phone to understand what was happening in week 13 versus week 18 with brain development. And now Their pictures as they grow up are all being shared on social media. This is a generation that will never get away from this technology. Their parents are comfortable using it, and they will be too. But if we look at the older Gen Zers now, those 23-year-olds that are entering the workforce, they're very savvy on all media, and they can expertly navigate it. A common misconception, which I think we talked about right before the break, is that Generation Z actually has a shrinking attention span, but that's simply not true. They're really, really skilled at threading through a ton of information very quickly because they've been doing it their whole lives, but they're also skilled at zeroing in on what's important to them quickly because they're good at weeding out good and bad content, and they can be laser focused and hardworking once they decide what to put their attention towards. When they finally decide what to consume, it's not shocking what they're looking at. They're interested in social media, websites, streaming video like Hulu and Netflix, digital video like YouTube, and streaming audio the most. They live and breathe social in a way that no other generation does, and they can check their social media accounts up to 100 times a day, and they're willing to share their social media accounts and handles with brands. 52% of them will share a social account or a handle over their own personal information. But they don't use social media to tweet about what they had for lunch, like many of us might. Instead, they use it to be empowered and inspired and enact social change. In other words, Generation Z are actually natural-born marketers. Out of curiosity, just shout it out. What platform do you think Generation Z says they cannot live without? Instagram. YouTube. YouTube is the only platform they say they can't live without, and we know from yesterday, YouTube is one of the fastest growing content repositories online, if not already. They rely on influencers heavily to teach them new skills. However, influencers need to walk a very careful line, because if influencers do something that Generation Z disagrees with, they'll drop them very quickly. Can anyone remember Logan Paul? Yeah. Logan Paul, very popular. Did something a little salacious in the media. He went to Japan, shared photos that did not agree with Generation Z, and now he's a short blip on the line of influencers. He's not as powerful as he once was, to say the least. So truth number 2, it obviously wasn't shocking to us that digital is in their DNA, but that doesn't mean that Generation Z is they're feeling fulfilled by their current digital experience. In our survey, 61% of Gen Zers told us that technology and social media get in the way of interpersonal relationships and make it harder for them to meet friends and develop deep face-to-face connections with people. This is just one reason why we know that Gen Z appreciates technology, but they want to unplug. In our study, Gen Z told us that technology helps them stay in touch with the world and helps them stay connected, but 75% of them can feel that, in general, media is overwhelming at times, and 70% say media can distract them from important things. 54% said that they look forward to enhancements in current technology that will make their lives better, but they look for opportunities to step away. 50% told us they wish for more time away from technology. 48% said that they wish that they weren't on social media because it makes them anxious and wish they use it less. 47% said they intentionally put their phone away and think that their generation would benefit more from stepping away from their phone. So while we see all these numbers about their high usage of digital media, they're not happy with what they're doing and want opportunities to step away. But they don't actually want to step away that far. When they unplug, they are striving for social, share-worthy moments, opportunities that they can still share something later or in the moment quickly on digital media so they can post what they're doing to their network of friends. So if you're a magazine brand, how can you do that? Yesterday, someone talked about engage the page, which really stuck with me. You can integrate shareable worthy moments into your editorial and advertising experiences by creating things that can be pulled off of the page and added to your, go with the reader as they go. So one example of this that we've seen our advertisers do is add a Post-it note to the page. Another example, dare I say it, that we pitched for Clemson, University, was to post there in a repositionable low-tact label that could be pulled off the page and stuck to the back of someone's phone with a football schedule. While that's great for a university, it's also great for any brand. Maybe the First Bank of Boston to post the Pat schedule, for example, to have their message stay with them throughout. Magazines can do this the same way by adding these types of engagements to their pages that stick with Gen Z. Now lastly, truth number 3, Generation Z recognizes the value of print and they appreciate it. They know there's a difference between reading on screen versus the printed page and pay attention longer while they're reading on the screen. I don't need to go into these findings. We obviously spent a lot of time with that yesterday, but the same rules apply for media consumption. When we survey Generation Z, we ask them, what type of media do you engage with that you don't engage with other media at the same time? And newspapers and magazines, of course, were the natural answer for that. For them and every generation, they use it without interruption. And when they read magazines, they not only turn to them to entertain, but also to inform and stay up on current events. As noted before, Teen Vogue is a great example of setting the standard by providing a mix of editorial that Generation Z flocks to. They also value print because they trust good journalism. And this is where our industry excels. I see, Linda, you're nodding. We talked a lot about this on Tuesday night, the quality of journalism, but because Generation Z grew up online, they know how to weed through that good and bad content. When they see editorial coming from magazines, they know that is good content they can trust. And this is, again, not just because they trust the brand, but they trust that good journalism over platforms. Okay, so how can publishers open up new revenue streams? What are the new opportunities for you by creating experiences that Generation Z loves? Well, first, you have to capture their attention. To do this, you need to be fluid. Generation Z has very fluid personalities, worldviews, and media consumption, and you need to be fluid like they are. If you're not talking about the platforms that you're on, if you're not talking about your brand and the things that your brand is doing to engage open-mindedness, the world, social change, climate change, Generation Z will leave you in the dust. You have to engage them on all the platforms that they're on in the way they want to be talked to, which is why we also recommend that you start a conversation about those things Generation Z wants to talk about, and then listen for their response, because they'll give it to you. Generation Z also feels that they are not responding to traditional advertising. 74% object to brands targeting them through paid social, and instead prefer brands to create a conversation with them online that has a positive presence and it entices consumers to interact with them. So start those conversations and listen. And when you start those conversations, talk about what your brand is doing to make the world a better place. One example I was actually going to mention that Darren already talked about today was in Meredith, was in Martha Stewart Living with the recent article in the April issue about recycling and having a small footprint. This is the type of editorial that really resonates with Generation Z. So have this in your editorial, but also talk about what you as a brand are doing. If you recycle all those newsstand copies that don't move off the newsstand, tell Generation Z about it. Tell them what you're doing as you recycle. Tell them what you're doing to empower women or diversity in your organizations. 93% of Gen Z says a company's impact on society affects their decision whether or not to engage with this brand. So it's important that you're making sure Generation Z knows the positive impact that you're having on society. Now, once you've captured their attention, how are you going to turn them into loyal advocates? Well, we talked about being fluid, so keeping your content platform specific. You also have to be authentic. To be authentic, you have to have a clear point of view that doesn't change based on the circumstances or the platform. You have to have a voice that's unique and different, and you have to show a willingness to take a stance on controversial social issues. Next, you need to let them create your content. As I mentioned, Generation Z relies heavily on influencers. You have to find the influencers that are engaging Gen Z and bring them into your fold. Make them create content for you, and Generation Z will listen and respond. Now, price matters. As we talked about, not only do they not have much money now, but they also are price-savvy consumers and shop on price. So while they're still coming of age, you have to make the barriers of entry low to them. Make sure they have your magazine brand in hand. It's our responsibility as an industry to get this audience engaged and interested in magazines so they'll keep this behavior with them throughout their lifetimes. You have to bring digital into the real world. This is what magazines are already doing. You're complementing the experience they're having digitally in print. They're used to brands like Warby Parker, a company that started online, now having a brick and mortar store. You have to think about the fact that your brand is a complement to what they're doing digitally. And lastly, and perhaps this is a bit of a plug for the Gen Zers in the room, but the most important thing to remember is that you have to hire Generation Z and empower them. You can't market to Generation Z without knowing who they are. You have to listen to the people, fly low, while you're managing and directing your company. Get ideas from Generation Z, and you will grow with them. So now who's doing it really well? We asked the students that responded to us unaided to tell us their top favorite brands. Out of the 2,500 students that responded to us, we got over 1,300 brands that they said that they liked, which means they're not very brand loyal. The 8 brands that you see here are brands that got at least 100 likes, so to speak, which isn't many. But you'll see of these 8 brands, 4 of them are technology companies, and the rest are mostly retailers. You don't see the Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat that you might have thought that you would have seen here and what we predicted we would have seen before we did the survey. One that I want to call out is Target, because they're doing a really good job at redesigning their stores and creating a shopping experience that allows all people, including Generation Z, to disconnect but share. So the statuette of the dog, I think his name is Bullseye. They have him in a lot of the stores that they're redoing. They have props around him, a sign with a hashtag on it. It means when you go into the store, as any consumer, but especially Generation Z, it's a photo opportunity that you can post online later with their hashtag. And that really resonates with Generation Z. Okay, so in a nutshell, if you didn't learn anything from this presentation, you must take these 3 things away. You need to get to know them and get to know them now because they're growing up quickly and a force to be reckoned with a lot of sway on consumer buying. You need to personalize your message to them on every platform, and you need to keep learning and growing because they have insatiable appetites for knowledge. They won't stop learning and expect your brand to keep up with them. And if you do this, you'll be rewarded with a loyal, savvy customer base. So thank you for your time today.